The Rhine River stretched like a silver vein through the heart of Germania, its waters cold, its banks restless, whispering tales of a world on the edge of chaos. It's 286 AD, and the Roman Empire's grip on its northern frontier is slipping, its legions stretched thin, its emperors distracted by rebellion within. On the eastern banks, the Franks, a fierce Germanic people, watch with hungry eyes, their tribes united under the Sicambri, Chamavi, and Bructeri, their voices a low growl of defiance. They've raided Roman lands before, their longships slicing through the mist, but this time it's different. This time they're not just raiders, they're rebels, ready to carve a new destiny from the empire's crumbling edge. At the center of this storm stands Carausius, a Roman general tasked by Emperor Maximianus to guard the Dover Strait, to keep the Franks and Saxons at bay. He's a man of iron will, his face scarred by battles, his loyalty to Rome unshaken, until now. Whispers of betrayal swirl around him, rumors that Maximianus fears his ambition, that the emperor's orders hide a darker intent. On the Frankish side, a young Sicambri leader named Gennobaudes rises, his heart burning with the stories of his ancestors, their songs of freedom echoing in his blood. He dreams of a land where the Franks bow to no one, where the Rhine is theirs alone. As Carausius fortifies the frontier, Gennobaudes rallies his tribes, their chants shaking the forest, their eyes fixed on the river's western shore. The stage is set, the tension crackling like a storm about to break, a rebellion that will ripple through history, a clash that will birth an empire. The Rhine's waters churned under a sky heavy with clouds, their ripples carrying whispers of rebellion, of defiance, of a storm that would shake the bones of an empire. On the eastern bank, Gennobaudes stood tall, his cloak of wolf fur billowing in the wind, his eyes tracing the river's flow, a silver thread that marked the line between freedom and chains. The Sicambri leader had gathered his tribes, the Chamavi, the Bructeri, the Tencteri, around a sacred oak, its gnarled branches stretching like a crown over the forest, its roots deep in the earth, a witness to their oaths. This was no mere meeting, it was a ritual of the Franks, a bloodless pact sealed with mead and chants, their voices rising to Wodan, their god of war, as they swore to reclaim the Rhine, a tradition born from centuries of defiance against Roman rule. Gennobaudes spoke, his voice a growl that cut through the wind, recounting tales of their ancestors, warriors who'd hunted in these woods, who'd fished in these waters, who'd never bent to Roman steel. He told of the gods, Woden's ravens circling above, Donar's thunder rumbling in the distance, a divine promise that the Rhine would be theirs again, a land where their songs would echo free. The tribes roared, their cheers shaking the leaves, their resolve hardening like the iron in their forges. But as they raised their drinking horns, a shadow fell over the river, a mist rising sudden from the water, thick and cold, curling around the oak like a shroud, and a croak echoed, deep and guttural, a sound that wasn't beast, wasn't wind, but a voice, a spirit, a guardian of the Rhine, its presence heavy, its will ancient, its call a warning to all who dared cross its flow. Across the Rhine, Carausius stood on a Roman watchtower, his gaze fixed on the eastern shore, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, a blade forged in Gaul, its edge sharp with memory. The general's men were weary, their armor dented, their rations thin, their faith in Rome fraying like a worn cloak. It was 286 AD, a time of turmoil for the empire. Maximianus, co-emperor with Diocletian, ruled the west, but his grip was shaky, his legions stretched thin by revolts in Gaul, by the Bagadai peasants who'd turned bandit, by whispers of betrayal in his own court. Carausius had been sent to the Dover Strait to stop the Franks and Saxons, but the frontier was a sieve, its forts crumbling, its men outnumbered, and the general felt the weight of it all, a burden heavier than the empire's eagle standard. He climbed down, his boots crunching on the frost, his breath a fog in the dawn, and walked to the river's edge, where the water lapped at the stones, its surface dark, its depths alive with secrets. The Franks called this river sacred, a vein of their gods, and Carausius had laughed at their tales, until now. A ripple broke the stillness, too deliberate, too timed, and a croak echoed, low and resonant, a sound that sent a chill through his bones, a sound that wasn't frog, wasn't wind, but a voice, a spirit, a guardian of the Rhine, its eyes glowing faint in the mist, yellow and unblinking, watching him, judging him, whispering his name. He drew his sword, its blade catching the light, but the river answered with a surge, a wave that splashed cold against his boots, a warning that this rebellion would not be fought by men alone. Back in the forest, Gennobaudes led his warriors to the river bank, their longships ready, their shields painted with runes, their eyes burning with purpose. They'd strike at dawn, a raid to test Rome's strength, to draw Carausius out, to break the frontier's spine. But as they chanted, the croak returned, louder, closer, a sound that rose from the water, a call that wasn't theirs, wasn't human, a voice that spoke in the tongue of the gods, its words a hiss, cross and be claimed. The warriors froze, their hands tightening on their spears, their gazes darting to the river, where the water shimmered odd, glowing faint with a greenish hue, shapes moving beneath, fish or spirits or the dead, a sign, a warning, a promise of a power beyond their own, a guardian that would not yield. The stage was set, the Rhine a battleground, its waters a mirror of two worlds, Rome's iron and the Franks' fire, Carausius's doubt and Gennobaudes' dream. But something else stirred, something ancient, something tied to the river's heart, a spirit that had watched the Franks for centuries, a force that whispered in the dark, that guarded the water, that demanded respect. This rebellion wasn't just a clash of men, it was a dance with the divine, a tale that would echo through the ages, a storm that would birth a new dawn. Dawn broke over the Rhine, its light a pale fire on the water, but the air was thick with mist, a shroud that clung to the river like a living thing, a veil for the storm about to break. Gennobaudes stood at the prow of his longship, his warriors' oars slicing through the current, their shields gleaming with runes of Wodan, their chants a low thunder that matched the river's hum. The Sicambri leader's eyes burned with purpose, his hand gripping a spear carved with sacred marks, his men wielding axes and short swords, their wolf fur cloaks matted with dew, their war cries rising as they aimed for the Roman fort on the western shore, where Carausius's legions waited, their ballistae loaded, their banners snapping in the wind. The longships struck, their hulls grinding on the bank, and the Franks poured forth, their war cries shaking the earth, their spears flashing as they charged the Roman line, a wave of fur and iron against a wall of steel. Carausius stood firm, his voice a roar over the clash, his sword raised, his men forming a shield wall, their rectangular scuda locked tight, their pila raining down like deadly hail, piercing Frankish shields, splintering wood, drawing cries of defiance. Iron met iron, the air filled with the ring of steel, the thud of axes on shields, the shouts of men, the river's roar, a symphony of chaos that echoed through the mist, the ground slick with mud, the sky darkening as if the gods themselves watched. But the Rhine itself stirred, its waters rising sudden, surging over the bank, a flood that wasn't natural, wasn't timed, a wave that glowed with a greenish hue, a power that answered to no man. The croak returned, louder, deeper, a voice that shook the battlefield, a sound that froze the Franks, that chilled the Romans, a call from the river's heart, a spirit roused by the clash, by the defiance, by the oath. The mist thickened, shapes forming within, tall, shadowy, their eyes yellow, their forms fluid, spirits of the Rhine, guardians of its flow, their whispers a hiss, cross and be claimed. The water surged again, a wave crashing over the fight, dragging men from both sides into the depths, their cries swallowed by the current, their armor glinting as they sank, the river's surface rippling with ghostly hands, pale and translucent, pulling at the living, a judgment from the deep. Gennobaudes fought on, his spear finding its mark, his voice a chant to Woden, but his eyes caught the shapes, the spirits, their gaze on him, their warning clear, a price for crossing, a cost for rebellion, the air growing cold, the mist whispering their names, their ancestors' names, a chorus of the dead. Carausius too saw them, his sword still, his breath a gasp, his mind torn between Rome's logic and the divine, a force he couldn't fight, couldn't flee. The river's glow casting shadows on his face, shadows that moved, that lived, that judged. The battle hung in balance, the Rhine a judge, its spirits a jury, its waters a verdict, a clash that wasn't just of men, but of worlds, of gods, of destinies. The mist lifted slow over the Rhine, its waters receding, its glow fading, but the river's judgment lingered, a scar on the earth, a whisper in the wind. The battlefield lay silent, the clash of steel replaced by the cries of the wounded, the Franks and Romans alike, their banners torn, their shields broken, their fates bound by the river's will. Gennobaudes stood among his warriors, his spear bloodied, his eyes on the water, where the spirits had vanished, their warning etched into his soul, a price paid, a lesson learned, a rebellion paused, but not ended. Carausius too survived, his sword sheathed, his mind heavy with the divine, his loyalty to Rome now a fragile thread, his path uncertain, his name soon to echo in history as a rebel himself. The Rhine flowed on, its banks marked by the battle, its waters carrying the tale downstream, a story that would grow, that would root deep in the Frankish heart, a seed of an empire to come. The Sicambri, Chamavi, and Bructeri returned to their forests, their chants softer, their oaths renewed, their dream of freedom alive, a dream that would one day birth the Frankish Empire, a power that would shape Europe's dawn. In 2025, the Rhine still whispers, its waters a mirror of the past, its banks a pilgrimage for those who seek the echoes of rebellion, the hum of the divine, the croak of a spirit that never sleeps, a guardian that watches still. This tale ends here, but the river doesn't. It flows on, carrying secrets we'll never fully know, stories we'll never fully tell. If this clash stirred you, haunted you, made you hear the Rhine's croak, hit that subscribe button on CogniTale Stories because we've got more hidden tales coming, wilder, deeper, ready to pull you in. Drop a comment. Do you think the Franks' rebellion was worth the cost? Like this video if it flowed for you. Share it with your friends, your crew, anyone who loves a good mystery because the Rhine's too fierce to keep quiet. Stick around, the next tale's a storm you won't forget.